Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Kick-Ass 2. Kick-Ass, played by Aaron Johnson, after leaving the superhero world for 2 years, has decided to come back and joins a superhero team called Justice Forever. And it starts by training with Hit Girl, but then Hit Girl promises her current guardian Marcus that she will try to be a normal girl and stop going around as a masked vigilante, while Kick-Ass gets more and more involved in being a masked vigilante, and Hit Girl tries to go on her own weird Mean Girls ripoff type of thing. And that's all going on until Christopher Mintz-Plasse returns, this time trying to be the world's first supervillain called the Motherfucker, and he's going to start his own supervillain team to take down Kick-Ass and his Justice Forever team. Kick-Ass 2 is kind of like a throwback to when Hollywood studios didn't plan their franchises out as much as they do now. If you got a movie sequel, it'd usually be cheaper. It wouldn't be done by the original director because he didn't want to come back, and you get a much crappier director and you get a much worse story. It would feel more like a cash-in. I mean, all sequels are technically cash-ins, but it would just reek of being a cash-in. And Kick-Ass 2 is very much like one of those older sequels. It's directed by Jeff Wadlow. Any magic or any sort of fun that I got from the original Kick-Ass is totally gone with this film. He has really no sense of a visual eye whatsoever. Really just bad sequel direction. They try to do all these kind of visual action jokes in it that particularly fall flat because he can't execute them very well. The first Kick-Ass film, which was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who's a very good director, he did X-Men First Class. In the first Kick-Ass, he's really referencing the Spider-Man films, visually at least. I mean, Kick-Ass, I understand, was a comic book, but it's also kind of visually kind of parodying the Spider-Man films and kind of the Marvel kind of a cinematic palette that not just Spider-Man uses, but Iron Man. In this film, it's used the same kind of color palette that those films did, but I think the problem with this film is they keep saying, like, this isn't a comic book, it's real life. But they still choose to use the same kind of very comic booky, very kind of cartoonish, very unrealistic colors, and kind of making it kind of hyper and cartoony and not feel real. And I think intellectually and artistically, to follow up the first Kick-Ass in a film, you really have to go on with that kind of idea of referencing visually superhero movies. And I think a smarter and the obvious follow-up would be to do more of a Nolan kind of thing and shoot it more like Nolan did his Batman films, which are the more realistic superhero films. And I think that's really where Kick-Ass 2 needed to go, but Jeff Wadlow isn't that smart of a director. He's not even really referencing the Spider-Man films. He's basically treading water. Well, I think I'm being very generous by saying he's treading water because he's not really that great at that. I'd say he only has really one great sequence in the entire film, which is when Hit Girl uses this thing called the Sick Stick, in which she makes these girls vomit by touching it, but she makes this one girl vomit and have diarrhea at the same time. And that was pretty amazing. And even that wasn't very visually inspired. That's why this film suffers, because it just feels like a cash-in sequel. I think what made Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass so memorable is that it's referencing these things, that it's kind of witty about what it's doing. It's kind of a comment on superhero. And then when you get to Kick-Ass 2, it's just simply a follow-up, but like a commercial follow-up and more just a follow-up to the action. It's not really a follow-up to any of the ideas. A good sequel is a film that really, it's like not just a commercial follow-up, it's an artistic follow-up. And this isn't an artistic follow-up whatsoever. So it makes itself kind of boring. It's just kind of a standard studio sequel. And what's really that exciting about that? There's nothing really exciting about Kick-Ass 2. And it's very uneven. It's kind of badly written. I don't know how faithful this is to the comic book. I never really read the original comic book, and I didn't read this comic book. I don't even know how you'd really fix it necessarily. It just felt like often a mess. Tonally, it would shift so dramatically and radically. It was just like hard to really get into. The script was kind of really a mess. I didn't really like any of the performances. I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I don't think she's as funny as she was in the original Kick-Ass. I mean, she's a lot older, so that joke can't really go on. And Aaron Johnson's pretty bland. I don't think Jeff Wadlow is kind of a typical Hollywood hack director. I mean, he's not really good with actors. He's not really good with shooting action or executing this action. This film feels very inept. It's just a little pinch above a straight-to-video sequel. And that's just just like the kind of quality you're getting from Kick-Ass 2. It's really completely unfulfilling on almost every level, and it's kind of a follow-up to a film I was never really that big of a fan of, so it feels pretty empty. And I don't know if Kick-Ass has aged that well. I don't know if a sequel made a lot of sense unless you're really going to do something interesting with it, and this film doesn't embrace that at all. It just kind of wants to make a commercial follow-up to Kick-Ass, and that's really not that interesting at all. So you just get a film that's just a little bit better than a straight-to-video movie. So if you've seen Kick-Ass 2 and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.